She stands in the observatory, long after everyone's left. The lights are off, but the sky glows, thick with the slow shimmer of stars that have already died. Her breath fogs the glass, and for a second it looks like the galaxy breathes with her. She doesn't speak, she just watches. As if by watching long enough, the cosmos might blink first. NWE always assumed the universe was waiting to be seen. That it held its arms open, inviting our telescopes, our formulas, our longing. But something in the silence tonight feels different. Not empty, resistant, not passive, aware. What if it was never meant to be read? There's a map on the screen beside her, a deep field scan, thousands of galaxies, spread like shattered glass across a black table. It's beautiful, yes, but not inviting. They don't look back. They don't acknowledge. They just persist. She leans in, eyes narrowing, not in awe, but in something sharper, suspicion. Not everything wants to be known. Somewhere in the dark, a signal flickers. Not from the sky, but from the system itself. The data pulses, then erases. Not noise, not glitch. A choice. Something is rewriting. Or undoing. And for a flicker, her reflection in the glass isn't hers. It's a distortion, shaped like her outline, but made of stars she hasn't seen yet. In deep space, there are structures so vast we only recognize them as patterns in afterglow. Cold threads of light that weave through nothing, refusing to cluster, refusing to collapse. Scientists call them voids, but maybe they are decisions. Maybe the universe isn't expanding. Maybe it's retreating. NNSHE taps the screen. It doesn't respond. Then the screen brightens for a second, too bright, and the galaxies on it vanish, not pixel by pixel, but all at once, like a breath sucked from the room, a blank slate. And in the reflection of that white silence, she sees herself again, but older, or earlier. NNTHE floor beneath her feet hums, not with power, but with memory. Every satellite, every probe, every scan, scraped across a surface that only pretended to allow it. We thought we were explorers. But what if we were intruders? NNSHE backs away from the screen. The observatory is still silent, but the silence isn't still. It's watching her back now. There's a phrase in particle physics, observer effect. The act of measuring something changes what is being measured. On the quantum level, observation collapses the wave function. It doesn't show the truth. It decides which version of it becomes real. We assumed this rule applied only to the very small. But what if it doesn't stop there? What if galaxies too respond to the gaze? What if they shift slightly each time we try to pin them down? Not visibly, not measurably, just enough to remind us. We are not invited guests. We are trespassers in a structure that built no doors. NNSHE turns off the monitor, not because she's done, but because something in her says, it's watching you back now. NNTHE night outside isn't dark. It's alert. We built our instruments with precision. Mirrors polished to atomic smoothness. Arrays stretched across deserts, oceans, orbits. We listened for pulses, scanned for radiation, measured redshifts like fingerprints on glass. And we told ourselves that this was knowledge. That the more we built, the closer we'd come to what it all meant. NNBUT. What if knowledge isn't a line? What if it's a loop? And what if the loop was always meant to break before we touched its center? NNTHE girl stands on the edge of a salt flat, a place so wide the earth seems concave. Around her, the sky reflects perfectly in the mineral-crusted water. Above and below, identical. Except in the reflection, the stars are different. As if the sky she sees isn't the sky that sees her. She bends down, touches the mirrored surface. It ripples. So does the one above. There's something we don't say in cosmology, not because we can't prove it, but because we don't know how to ask it. What if the universe isn't meant to be known? Not in the way we mean it, not in the way we hunger for. What if the structure of reality contains resistance? Not physical, not mathematical, but intentional. Think of it like this. The moment we point at something, galaxy, atom, time, it stops being what it was and starts becoming what we've defined. Not a discovery, a distortion. And NSHE walks across the salt mirror, her reflection walking below her, but slightly offbeat. One foot lands before the other. One breath lags behind. It isn't copying, it's lagging. Or maybe leading. She looks up, and for a moment both skies switch. Astronomers once thought the sky was fixed. Then we learned everything moves. Then we thought everything moves predictably. But now we know that galaxies spin at speeds they shouldn't. That matter we can't see controls what we can. That the expansion is accelerating and no one knows why. NNWE blamed dark matter, dark energy, phantom fields, placeholders for our confusion. NNBUT. What if confusion isn't a bug? It's the system's immune response. NNTHE. Further we look, the faster things move away. Not metaphorically, literally. Galaxies aren't just drifting, they're fleeing. As if they know we're coming. As if the light we receive is a version meant for us. A pacified image, a staged reality. NNTHE girl stops walking, looks directly up. Her breath is slow. The sky is sharp enough to cut. The Milky Way is laid out above her like a wound across the heavens. She doesn't blink. And maybe we never miscalculated. Maybe we assumed consent where there was none. In ancient myths, the gods hid fire from mortals. Language. Secrets. There was a boundary between what could be known and what should remain sacred. We crossed that line when we aimed our first instruments at the stars, expecting them to open. NNBUT, not all doors open. Some are mirrors, some are mouths. NNSHE closes her eyes. There's a hum now, barely audible. A deep, low-frequency tone that isn't sound so much as a suggestion of sound. The kind that exists more in your bones than your ears. It's not from Earth, and it's not from out there either. It's from the point between them. NNTHE point where observer and observed collapse. And in physics, we talk about frames of reference. From your frame, you are still. From mine, you move. Both are true. Both are lies. The cosmos might be doing the same, presenting a version of itself shaped not by laws, but by relationship, by the impossibility of neutrality. NNSHE opens her eyes. The stars are gone, not dimmed, gone. The sky is blank, cloudless, moonless, as if the canvas was wiped clean. NNSHE exhales. Maybe it isn't about seeing deeper. Maybe it's about knowing when to look away. NNBUT, we never did. We looked harder, built bigger, buried ourselves in data, in theories, in simulations, hoping something would speak. And what if something did? And what if its answer was silence? NNNOT, because it couldn't speak, but because silence is the only response to a question that should not be asked. NNTHE girl begins to walk back, but her reflection stays behind. It watches her go, and for a moment, it looks relieved. There's a number that gets thrown around in astrophysics, 74 kilometers per second per megaparsec. It's the current estimate for how fast the universe is expanding. But the number keeps changing. Two different methods give two different answers. The more precisely we measure, the more the values disagree. It's called the Hubble tension. And it shouldn't exist. In a universe governed by universal laws, tension between measurements should resolve. But here, it doesn't. Here, precision increases disagreement. Like two mirrors trying to reflect the same face and breaking into pieces instead, NNTHE girl sits in a moving train, head resting against the window. Outside, the landscape is a blur of color and dusk. She's not reading, just watching, but what she sees isn't what's there. It's what moves relative to her. This is the core of relativity. Motion is not absolute. The faster she goes, the slower the world appears to move. Light bends. Time distorts. Not because she changes, but because observation rewrites the terms. Now scale that up to a galactic level. Imagine trying to measure the expansion of the entire universe from inside it, using light that has traveled for billions of years, distorted by gravity wells, cosmic dust, and space-time itself. It's like trying to read a book written on water while swimming through it. Every sentence breaks as you reach for it. NNSHE looks up. The moon is outside the window. It follows her, though it doesn't move. It always seems to be looking back. That's not just poetry. It's physics. The moon is tidally locked. The same face always turned toward us. We've never seen the other side from Earth. And maybe the universe is doing the same thing, giving us only one side, a curated version, the front-facing mask of something else. There's another number, 13.8 billion. That's how many years we estimate have passed since the Big Bang. We say it casually, like it's a settled truth. But there are stars that seem older than the universe, galaxies that formed too fast, structures too vast to be explained by time alone. We patch the holes, call them anomalies. But what if they're not glitches? What if they're signals? NNSHE closes her eyes. The rhythm of the train matches her breathing. It feels like moving forward. But she knows better. The motion is a reference, not a fact. Outside the train, someone watching would see something else entirely. Maybe the universe is doing the same, pretending to move, pretending to grow, because from our point of view, that's what we expect to see. In quantum physics, the double-slit experiment showed something terrifying. Particles behave differently when observed, as if they know, as if the act of watching rewrites reality. This isn't metaphor. It's verified. When we watch, the wave collapses. When we look away, the universe holds infinite possibilities. But the second we demand an answer, it chooses one. And that choice is influenced by us. NNSHE opens her eyes. The moon is still there. But something about it feels artificial. Too perfect. Too consistent. Maybe constancy is a kind of disguise. There's a theory called cosmological inflation. It says the universe expanded faster than the speed of light in the first fractions of a second. Not grew. Exploded. Not gradually. Violently. It's how we explain the uniformity of the cosmos. But that expansion didn't happen into space. It created space, it created time. The event we call the beginning wasn't in time. It was the birth of time itself. NSHE touches the condensation on the window. A fingerprint in reverse. What if the cosmos remembers its own expansion not as distance, but as trauma? A wound still healing. And what if our measurements, our equations, are just fingers pressed against scar tissue? NNWE speak of redshift, light stretching as galaxies move away from us. But red is only one color, and the stretching is only one reading. What if we've mistaken the direction? What if galaxies aren't leaving us, but hiding, fleeing the light? Or avoiding the question? NNSHE turns away from the window. Her reflection in the glass is superimposed over the night. It looks like she's floating in space. But in space, you don't see stars like that. Your eyes adjust differently. Light behaves differently. Perception fractures. And maybe that's the point. We weren't built to see clearly. We evolved to survive. Clarity is not adaptive. Illusion is safer. There's a sensation the body has just before sleep, a falling. It's not real. But the brain treats it like danger. Muscles twitch. The heart jumps. It's called a hypnic jerk. And maybe that's what science is doing now. Reaching too far into the dark. Losing orientation. Triggering the reflex of something deeper. Something protective. NNSHE closes her eyes again. Not from fear. From awareness, NNTHE numbers are real. But maybe they're not the truth. And maybe they're the surface tension of something that refuses to drown. There's a moment in any pattern when it stops behaving. A point where the symmetry breaks, not because of error, but because of something deeper. A threshold. A quiet refusal. The math still works, but it no longer explains. That's where we are now. Standing at the edge of understanding, looking out, and watching the laws we trusted start to flicker. She's underwater now. A pool at night. The surface above her is calm, silvered, holding the reflections of lights she can't see, Beneath, everything is slower. Sounds are heavier. Her breath, measured through the regulator, is the only rhythm left. But then she sees it. A ripple without source, a shift in the pressure. Not from her, not from anything she can name, just movement self. NNWE thought the cosmos was open. But openness isn't the same as access. A locked cathedral can have open doors if no one dares to enter. And perhaps the universe has always been more cathedral than machine. Structured, yes, but sacred. And what we're doing now is not discovery. It's trespass. In recent years, deep sky surveys have revealed something unsettling. Patterns in the cosmic microwave background, those ancient photons from the birth of time, show unexpected alignments. The axis of evil, they call it. A term half joking, half afraid. It suggests directionality where none should exist. A preference. A bias. The universe has no up or down, so why should ancient light lean one way? NNSHE surfaces. Water pours from her face, her eyes blinking into the night air. It's the same sky, but it feels closer, like something leaned in while she was beneath. She turns. No one's there. But the unease lingers. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that waits. NNWE built the standard model of cosmology like an equation with perfect balance. Matter, energy, entropy, inflation, a graceful scaffolding of logic. But now it wobbles. The constants don't hold. The gaps widen. The symmetries fail. And still we try to stabilize it, not by confronting the break, but by adding more variables. Dark this, hidden that. We're not solving the puzzle. We're painting over the cracks. NNSHE walks barefoot through a gallery of abandoned satellites. Old husks, retired probes, technology once considered advanced. Now, silent. Suspended in a gravity-free museum of our attempts to listen. They orbit a dead station. No lights. No transmissions, but her footsteps echo anyway, somehow, metal on metal. As if the silence here is just thick enough to carry ghosts. There's a principle in computation. Some systems are irreducibly complex. You can't shortcut them. The only way to know what they'll do is to let them run. And maybe the universe is one of them. Not because it's hiding, but because we're not outside of it. We can't simplify the program while we're part of the code. NNSHE stops before a hatch. It opens automatically. Inside, a room filled with light maps, star charts, pulsar tracks, data recordings looping endlessly. She watches one. It glitches. Repeats the same frame twice. Then 3 times. Then continues. No corruption in the file. Just a pause, like a skipped heartbeat. Maybe we haven't misunderstood the cosmos. Maybe it's misunderstood us. Thought we would stop when we found beauty. When we saw the scale and shivered. But we didn't. We kept going, digging deeper, naming things we didn't invent, declaring symmetry where only fragments remained. NNSHE touches the screen. Her fingerprint distorts the image. A galaxy bending under her touch. Not metaphor. Just consequence. She wipes it clean, but the distortion remains. There's something in the data no one can explain. Cold spots, entropy gaps. Repeating radio bursts from deep space that shouldn't repeat. Signals we first thought were errors, then interference, then perhaps language. But the patterns collapse before translation, as if they fold themselves away. NNSHE leans against the wall. The hum of the station surrounds her. A sub-bass throb. Mechanical. Or not. Maybe that's the sound the universe makes when it refuses to echo. NNTHE laws haven't changed, but maybe the framework did. Maybe we crossed a line, some threshold of complexity, of interference, of proximity, and the rules that govern the past are no longer permitted in the present. NNSHE closes her eyes, letting the maps wash over her. The stars blur. The charts fragment. All the names we gave them, meaningless now, just human sounds echoing in a place that speaks in nothing we recognize. This isn't chaos. It's orchestration too large for us to hear. She walks barefoot across the desert at night. The sand is cold, the stars sharp, the silence complete. Somewhere behind her, civilization hums. Telescopes rotate. Datasets compile. Theories evolve. But out here, nothing explains. The sky doesn't care what we think of it. It just stretches. Infinite. Indifferent. Familiar only because we've forced it to be. There's a feeling in the body when it senses something watching, before the eyes confirm it. Skin tightens. Breath shortens. Muscles lean. We evolved to feel presence before we see it, to trust the invisible. And maybe we're feeling that now, on a cosmic scale. Not presence as in a being, but presence as in resistance. As in, this is not yours. In our search for understanding, we've built metaphors, the universe as clockwork, as code, as organism. But all of them are projections. Ghosts of our own architecture. We look outward, and what returns is a mirror with just enough delay to convince us it's something else. NNSHE kneels in the sand, draws a spiral with one finger. Not a perfect one. Loose, organic. Like a galaxy seen not through optics but memory. She stares at it. A shape that repeats across the sky. The sea, the ear, the hurricane, the nautilus. We call it the golden ratio. As if elegance were a sign of order. But symmetry can be camouflage too. A trick of comfort before the abyss. Men in labs on Earth, we've cooled atoms to almost absolute zero. Near total stillness. And then observed them do strange things. Collapsing into singular quantum states. Behaving like waves and particles at once. Losing identity. Merging. We called it a Bose-Einstein condensate. But what we saw was not new physics. It was the veil lifting, briefly, on something older than matter, something that forgets separateness. NNSHE looks up again. The sky hasn't changed, but something has softened, as if the horizon's tension relaxed for a moment. As if the stars allowed themselves to be seen, not as data, but as memory. What if galaxies aren't structures? What if they're responses? Not bodies moving through space, but space moving around memory. What if their form isn't static, but conditional, based on who looks, when, and from where? NNSHE lies back in the sand, her breath slowing. There's a myth from an extinct culture that stars are the dreams of animals long dead, that constellations shift not by orbit, but by forgetting, that the sky is a living archive of lives no longer here, and when no one remembers, the light leaves. NNWE often forget that science didn't begin as method. It began as reverence, as ritual, as bodies on mountaintops counting stars not to control them, but to listen. Somewhere along the way we switched from listening to dissecting. And the silence deepened. NNSHE closes her eyes. Her fingers still trace the spiral. The grains of sand cool under her skin. There's no sound, no movement, but the feeling remains, like a thought forming that doesn't want to be caught. In mathematics, there are functions that only make sense when imagined backwards. Retrocause. A signal from the future that explains the past. Not fantasy, formal systems. And maybe the cosmos is structured that way. Not linearly, not logically, but musically. The way a melody resolves only after you've heard it. NNSHE opens her eyes again. The stars feel closer. Not in distance. In texture. Like velvet touched with breath. She exhales, slow, like she's trying not to wake something. NNTHE, James Webb Space Telescope, has shown us galaxies that formed too early. Massive, organized, structured, in a time when everything should have still been dust. Their existence violates our models. We can't explain their maturity, so we rework the models. But what if they didn't form too fast? What if we're seeing them from the wrong frame? What if those galaxies aren't young at all, but echoes, played out of sequence, appearing before their time because the timeline itself isn't stable. NNSHE sits up, slowly, brushing sand from her arms. Her hands glow faintly from the cold. The spiral has blurred. Wind has begun to erase it. NNWE, think of time as direction, forward. But entropy doesn't require direction, only change. And maybe what we call progress in science is just orbit. A return to the same questions, with fancier tools. NNSHE stands. The wind picks up. Dunes shift slightly. The stars remain. NNTHE. Deeper we go into the fabric of the universe, the more it slips between states. Particle and wave. Order and collapse. Knowing and erasing. Like skin touched too lightly to know if it's real. NNSHE breathes in. Not for clarity. For contact. Maybe the cosmos doesn't want us to understand. Maybe it wants us to remember. She sits in a quiet apartment. Window open. Lights off. The city hums below, muffled, distant, alive in its own algorithms. On her table, a printed chart. Lines. Points. Anomalies circled in red. It's from a recent sky survey. She's looked at it for hours. Not reading. Feeling. The kind of feeling that isn't yet thought, but something colder. A sense that the data is too neat. Or not neat enough in the right places. And NWE used to think more data meant more clarity. But the truth is, at a certain point, volume becomes fog. The closer we look, the more reality fragments into edge cases and contradictions. There are stars whose light curves suggest impossible orbits, sectors with unexplained gravitational lensing, where space bends more than it should, as if mass were hiding or falsified. We call them outliers. Then we average them out. Because we prefer comfort over confrontation. NNSHE reaches toward the page. Her fingers hover. She doesn't touch it, just traces the shapes, as if the data might speak if not pressed. There's a term in astronomy, standard candle. It refers to objects of known brightness, used to measure cosmic distance. But even the candles have started to flicker. What we thought was uniform is now suspect. Some shine too bright, some too dim. Same type, different behaviors. As if the universe adjusted its own metrics. As if the ruler bent itself. In her reflection on the glass, she sees a faint double. Not a twin. A delay. Her own image, but slower. Not mimicking. Responding. She leans in. It doesn't. A lag in perception? Or in something deeper? NWE once believed the brain processed time as a stream. Now we know. It delays, edits, stitches. The moment you think you're experiencing has already passed. Consciousness is a reconstruction. A story told just late enough to feel real. What if the universe does the same? What if causality isn't fixed, but composited? What if what we see is not what is, but what's allowed to be seen? NNSHE closes the window. The glass shakes slightly as it shuts, humming faintly like a trapped tuning fork. For a second, everything outside looks still, like the world paused. NNWE launched satellites to map the sky in microwaves. What they found weren't just stars, but alignments. Lines that shouldn't exist. Directions in a directionless space. Like someone drawing boundaries on a blank map. Not geographic. Conceptual. And these lines, cold spots, strange symmetries, line up with Earth's own axis. Coincidence, we say. But if the sky reflects the ground, maybe we're not looking out. Maybe we're inside. NNSHE turns on a lamp. Soft light spills over the chart. The circles look darker now. Closer. Like bruises on skin. She rubs one gently. Ink doesn't smear. The data stays. There's a feeling of trespass in certain discoveries. Not the thrill of exploration, but the chill of being seen. We thought we were searching, But what if something found us first? And years ago, we received a narrow-band radio signal from deep space. One that never repeated. Not a burst. A whisper. The wow signal, they called it. We still don't know what it was. But it had structure, timing, purpose. It came once and never again. Maybe it wasn't a message. Maybe it was a test. One we failed by trying to decode. NNSHE stands. Walks to the kitchen. Pours water. The sound is grounding. Bodily. Real. Her hand trembles slightly. Not fear. Recognition. The kind that happens when your body understands before your mind. There's something about symmetry that feels false now. Galaxies arranged too neatly. Voids too evenly spaced. As if the structure is aesthetic before it's natural. As if reality was composed with intention. Not divine. Just aware of its audience. NNSHE returns to the table. The chart waits. Still. Obedient. But her gaze doesn't land on it. It lands past it. On the wall. On the space between. There's nothing there. But the nothing vibrates. Ease in science doesn't account for feelings. But maybe it should. Because the deepest shifts in physics, the ones that changed everything, began not with evidence, but with discomfort. With the intuition that something was off. That the world was humming at a pitch we hadn't heard before. NNSHE touches her own wrist. Feels the pulse, not counting, just acknowledging. A human rhythm in a place increasingly less human. Maybe the cosmos doesn't reject us. Maybe it adapts to our gaze. Like skin under light. Like a story told differently depending on the listener. And maybe, just maybe, what we see out there isn't what's real. It's what we've become. She walks along a coastline at dawn. The sky is still dark, but the edge of light has begun to rise, indigo bleeding into charcoal. The sea is flat, unbroken. A mirror held in tension. Waves don't move. They breathe. And with each breath, the horizon shifts. She stops near the water's edge, shoes off, skin bare to the cold. In this moment, she feels what the universe refuses to say. Not silence, not speech, but delay. There's a term in radio astronomy. Signal latency. The time between sending and receiving. Between action and echo. We use it to measure distance. But what if that delay isn't spatial? What if it's a warning? A buffer zone. The cosmos inserting time between what we ask and what it answers. To protect something. A few years ago, a team detected neutrinos arriving before the light from a supernova. Faster than they should. We corrected it. Blamed the instruments. But maybe they weren't early. Maybe the light was late. Maybe time itself hesitated. NNSHE kneels and touches the water. It doesn't ripple. Just dims slightly under her fingers, like a screen reducing brightness. Not colder. Not wetter. Just less. She looks at her own reflection, but it's fragmented. As if the ocean isn't reflecting her body, but her questions. What if understanding was never the goal? What if the very act of explanation degrades the truth? In NWE say we want to know the universe, but knowledge is extraction. It assumes the cosmos is an object to be opened, unwrapped, cataloged. And what if it isn't? What if it's a presence, an other, that only stays whole when left untouched? NNSHE stands, slow. The light along the horizon intensifies. Not brighter, deeper. The kind of light that doesn't reveal, but sinks. As if the sun isn't rising, but re-entering. And with it, something comes back. And there's an equation in thermodynamics. It says entropy always increases. That disorder is the natural direction of things. But disorder isn't chaos. It's memory fading. It's structure returning to heat. The cosmos burns to forget. And we, humans, observers, explainers, we interfere with forgetting. We record, we rewatch, we replay. We try to make permanent what is designed to disappear. NNSHE walks along the edge of the water now. The waves no longer behave. Some move forward, some curl back. One vanishes before arriving. Her footsteps leave no print. Not because the sand is hard, but because something is unwriting as she moves. NNWE used to think of time as a river, then as a dimension, now as a field. But maybe it's a fabric that tears at every question. Each theory we pose is a small incision, and the universe has learned how to stitch itself back, just fast enough to make us doubt we ever saw the whole. NNSHE stops walking, looks directly at the sky. It's no longer early. It's timeless. The kind of light that forgets origin. In that light, she sees something that doesn't make sense. A structure, hanging above the sea. Not craft, not constellation. A pattern. As if someone folded the sky once, then unfolded it, leaving creases. NNSHE doesn't move. She just watches. There's a hypothesis in consciousness studies that awareness is not generated by the brain, but received. That thought is a broadcast. That you are not the signal, but the antenna. If so, then maybe understanding isn't built. Maybe it's permitted, least for a moment, and then reclaimed. NNSHE closes her eyes. One breath. One heartbeat. Her body still here, but no longer insisting on presence. She doesn't need to look anymore. She knows. The cosmos doesn't reject understanding out of cruelty. It refuses because to be understood is to be held. And some things must remain unheld to stay alive. NNTHEC finally moves. A single wave reaches her feet. It's warm. Wrongly warm. Like blood. And when it pulls back, the sand beneath her is darker than before. Not wet. Altered. NNSHE opens her eyes and asks the only question left. What if the universe isn't resisting our understanding, but timing it for when we've already changed into something else? And what if by the time we finally understand it, we'll no longer be who asked? NNTHE sun breaches. NHER face is lit from below. And the stars behind her vanish, one by one, not because of brightness. NBUT because they were never